Good morning, my name is James. I'm an outdoor host and enthusiast here at Malahat Skywalk, and I want to welcome you to our first Connecting with Nature Live. I also want to gratefully acknowledge that we are here on the ancestral and traditional lands of the Malahat Nation, part of the Coast Salish peoples. So when you do come out to our tower, you will know that we have a 600-meter elevated walkway. This walkway actually leads out to a 10-story tower high above fjords, overlooking mountains, and incredible enormous trees, Douglas fir, western red cedar, even Gary oaks and arbutus, along with a large number of other tree species. It's a wonderful place to be, but sometimes when you're out here you get overwhelmed by the grandeur of it all. And sometimes we forget about how important some of the smaller plants and organisms around here are to keeping this as a healthy environment. So that's part of what we're going to do today. As we go along, I want to make sure that you are aware and available to chat with us and ask us any questions that you might have. If we get the opportunity, we'll reply to them. If we don't know the answer, we'll find out and get back to you. Either on our blog, our Facebook page, or on our Friday Nature Facts. So let's go and explore a little bit around here. I want to let you know first, I was very lucky to be raised by parents who helped me to explore nature, but also to embrace it, to feel as if I was part of it, and that nature wasn't something out and around me. It was actually something connected to me and that was very important to my long-term health and welfare, mentally and physically. So that's a great gift, to be able to ask questions and to, for the rest of my life, be curious about all sorts of different species that happen to be in the environment. Behind me you can actually see what most of you know as moss. It actually is moss. And that is actually a plant. You can see that here it's actually chosen as its substrate to connect to tree bark, but it also connects not only to trees and rocks, but pretty well anything that it can cling onto. We know moss as being very prevalent where there's large amounts of rain or fog and high humidity. It is actually a plant, so it actually is known as a non-vascular plant. It actually holds on not with roots, so it actually has what are known as rhizoids that connect it to whatever it's decided to attach to. And it actually gets most of its moisture through the air, through its cell walls, and that way it can absorb up to 5 times its body weight in water. Obviously, as a plant, it's very important to us because it does photosynthesize. It does convert carbon dioxide and break it down and provide us with oxygen and itself with energy and food. So it is a great carbon sink. It also acts like a blanket that in the wintertime can actually keep the ground from freezing up, can keep some of the bacteria and other organisms that are inside the soil alive in very harsh weather. And in the summer it acts like a cooling blanket or a tent over the top of that same surface so that it doesn't dry out or die. Often you'll get seeds that will come down and land into the moss and grow and use it essentially as a starter soil. Can also be used by many other creatures like birds or squirrels for making nests, places for it to stay warm itself. So we know the importance of moss. We also around us see, hanging from these trees, things that look like long bits of fur or hair. I have a bit of that here, and I've actually known this for many years as being moss. It in fact isn't moss. It's actually something called lichen. Lichen is in fact not a plant. It's actually an organism that has come around as a combination, a symbiotic relationship between fungus and algae and sometimes cyanobacteria, and they actually form a very stable, very strong combined organism known as lichen. This is just one of the many forms. A lot of them do have names, common names, that sound very much like moss. Old man's beard, often referred to as old man's beard moss, witch's hair, reindeer fur, bear fur. A lot of them do dangle down and look very much like fur or hair. This is actually known as a fruticose category of lichen. There actually are close to 3,700 lichen species just in North America and over 14,000 in the world. So to become an expert in these would take years and years and years of study and training. This, as you can see, looks a little bit like a shrub. So fruticose actually comes from a Latin root meaning shrub. Can hang down in many cases from branches, or in some cases you'll see fruticose lichen that actually looks very much like a shrub sticking up and supporting itself up off of whatever it's hanging on to. It has a very unique quality. It does a lot of things that plants do. It actually can photosynthesize and help to convert carbon dioxide and break it down so that we do get oxygen, and it also gets energy for itself, mostly for the fungus. But it also has the ability to take nitrogen out of the air. It does what we call nitrogen fixing. It turns it into a form that plants can use. Think of it as basically a natural fertilizer that other plants rely on to be able to grow. So that's one type. There are two other types or categories of lichen. One of them is called foliose, and as you can see here, as you might expect, foliose looks a little leaf-like. It is distinguishable because it does have two very distinct sides to it, almost like a folio of a paper. And this actually has some names. One of them that you may have heard is reindeer moss. So reindeer moss will actually provide food for reindeer and elk and deer throughout the wintertime, and they can feed on this. Again, birds can use it to help to boost the size of their nests. And the third type is a little bit stranger. It is actually known as crustose lichen. You can actually see a little bit of it on here. It is a little bit like makeup or paint or chalk.